This is Gareth Southgate, and this is the Three Lions podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Three Lions podcast. My name is Russell Osborne and this is an independent England football supporters podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the recent episodes I've put out there. There are going to be plenty more to come over the next few weeks, especially as we gear up towards the summer's European Championships. Hopefully the weather's going to change and it'll really feel like an international tournament. Now coming up very soon I'll be speaking with an England manager who tells us about the growing game of walking football. But first, I'd like to touch on the ticket situation for England supporters for the Euros. Now, as you may remember from a recent episode, I mentioned that UEFA had cancelled all ticket applications and we were to be added to a ballot by our own fan clubs. Obviously, in our case, the England Supporters Club. That ballot has since been conducted, and due to the restricted allocation of Wembley, which at the moment is set at 22,500, there was always going to be a lot of disappointed and frustrated people out there. Those who initially had tickets only to have them taken away from them, and then find themselves unfortunate because they didn't match the Supporters Club ticket ballot rules. I decided not to publicise my results as I didn't want to come across as, crass or arrogant on social media. But I've been very fortunate. I've been allocated a ticket for each group game, one against Croatia, one against Scotland and one against the Czech Republic. But I kind of feel I have earned that luck. I think I had 44 caps to my name, which meant I had enough caps to be considered for all the games. And I've been to all the home games and 2 away games during the membership period. I've been a member since, I don't know when. But let's be honest, with various virus variants floating about, I'd say a tongue twister, isn't it? I am not counting my chickens too much just yet. We know from experience that things can still change in the snap of the fingers. As I say, I do feel fortunate. But it means I hope to bring you a flavour of the games through this podcast for those that can't be there. And we all know this pandemic has brought about so many problems, and the issue of allocating tickets for a major football tournament is one of them. But in the grand scheme of things, it is such a small thing. But I appreciate how frustrating it can be for some. But what I will say is for those who have missed out, enjoy the tournament with friends, share a beer and sing-song in pubs, and going forward, continue to apply for tickets for games, both home and away. Build up your caps. That then will stand you in good stead in applying for future tournaments. Qatar is, 18 months away, give or take? Okay, perhaps not the most desirable places to go for football, but with a minimum of 7 scheduled World Cup qualifiers before then, all of those come with caps, which makes 14 of those, 14 caps up for grabs between now and the end of the year. And that's before any friendlies are announced. It's a great way to get on the ladder. And then thinking further ahead with Germany hosting the 2024 European Championships, that whets the appetite just a little more. I know it's frustrating missing out on some of these tournament games, but the future is looking brighter, promise you. Now, moving on. I remember, as a child, watching any football match on the telly. Once it was over, the only place I was going was out to the garden. And even now, perhaps not as capable with the ball as I once was, but there's still that feeling or dream of playing, isn't there? It never leaves you. And it shouldn't. Regardless of your age or capabilities, I think my next chat proves that. Now, As I've mentioned so often in the past, there's so many England teams out there, so many different types of codes of the game too. But one of the fastest growing codes is that of walking football. So it's my pleasure to welcome the England manager, Stuart Langworthy, to the Three Lions podcast. Stuart, hello there.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
Oh, very well, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad at all, thank you. Looking forward to spending a bit of time talking about the wonderful game.
Yeah, go on. The walking football. I mean, I must admit, I've heard of it and I've seen little glimpses here and there, but I don't know really enough about it. Do you want to just give us a little introduction to the game?
Yeah, okay. First, I suppose I ought to clarify. I'm the WFA over 60s England manager, and I'm also assisting with the over 40s women's team. And I'm also a recently appointed director of the WFA. So it's quite a busy time, and it's all voluntary at the moment. But as you say, walking football is one of the fastest growing sports in the world at the moment. I mean, we think that in England there's over 60,000 people who are playing walking football at the moment, and that was the sort of last research done by Sport England. How did it come about? Well, there are two sort of episodes of where walking football was recorded. There was one in the 20s and one in the 30s, The latter being at Derby County. But as far as anyone can establish, those were sort of unofficial one-off games, and there were no real rules or as such, and they were 11-a-side, played generally by older people. 10 years ago, a chap called John Crute, who is at Chesterfield Football Club, and he's a director at Chesterfield at the time, he had people in his community who wanted, older people who wanted to play football, and they kind of invented the current format of the sport, where it was played to non-contact rules by groups, six-a-side teams of older people. And really, the sport has sort of developed from there. The WFA was formed in 2016 and has developed a set of rules. The FA has got involved through its County FA network. There are now two sets of rules. There's the WFA set of rules and the FA set of rules. They're not vastly different, but the biggest major difference is that the WFA rules are non-contact, whereas the FA are minimal contact. Although that does sound confusing, it's a damn sight better than when I started the game 6 years ago, where every single tournament you went to had a different set of rules and referees who had no idea as to what rules you were playing, and et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, at the WFA, we're trying to standardise things, and we're in a better shape now in terms of the sport than we were 6 or 7 years ago when many people started playing it.
Yeah. So it's, from what I've seen as well, it's played on obviously a smaller pitch, sort of a six-a-side pitch, which is great because there's so many of those available in sort of leisure centres around the country now, so everyone can really get involved. And it's sort of the smaller goals as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and what you've just described is obviously the benefits of playing smaller-sided football. More people get a touch, smaller pitches, etc. But it's also, in a way, the biggest problem facing the sport, in that there are no dedicated pitches for walking football. It's grown up on different facilities around the country. So you may have a five-a-side facility with boards, which is not ideal, because if you've got groups of older people playing, the ball never goes dead because You've got boards keeping the ball in. Some facilities are like full-size AstroTurfs, and therefore the game is played across a full-size AstroTurf, which is huge, and you end up with it being 8 or 9 or 10 aside, and then it's difficult to stop running when you're playing on such a big pitch. But as I say, that the idea is to try and standardise it, and the standard that we play up for in club competitions and national competitions now is a much smaller pitch, normally sort of 40 by 30 pitch. We play with the mini soccer sized goals, which are 12 foot by 6 foot. And there is a D for the goalkeeping area, much like five-a-side, and the goalkeeper is not allowed out and players are not allowed in. And it's below head height. And as I said before, for the WFA rules, it's non-contact, therefore a much safer sport for the older generation.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about myself. I've never played it, but I'm thinking, should I, when I get to the point where I might want to play it, do people find they're tempted to run? Because I think I'd be like, oh, I could get that ball. I just need to go a bit faster.
Yeah.
Is that a problem?
It's the biggest problem in the sport, and it is a little bit subjective. I mean, unfortunately, if you put something out there on YouTube, footage of a walking football match, you will get lots of people commenting on the fact that it's running. You won't get lots of comments about how technical the sport is and how talented the players are and all the benefits of getting large numbers of people out there being fit and healthy and having fun. The one thing that people seem to focus on is the running. And as I said to you earlier, I spent most of yesterday refereeing at a regional tournament, and it is very difficult. It's very difficult as a referee to spot. Some people's natural walking actions are, particularly if they've got small legs, they move very, very quickly. Right. And you've also got to try and spot running off the ball, because one of the biggest problems is people who run off the ball to try and get themselves into good attacking or better defending situations. And it really should be quite simple, because the rules are that one foot has to be on the floor. Right. But when the game is played quickly, there's so many different things that you've got to watch. But the players really do appreciate it when you've got a very strict referee who is trying to cut down on the running, because otherwise it just turns into old men's five-a-side. Right. And that's one of the things that the WFA is trying to do. We are training referees, and we've now trained quite a few hundred referees across the country and in other countries. And the more that we can do that, and the more that we can get club sessions refereed, then the slower the game will become, and the less of a shock it will be to players when they turn up to play in tournaments and they're told that they're running. Because that's the problem. At club sessions, it's a free-for-all, and then they turn up at tournaments when they've got a strict referee and they can't quite understand the fact that someone's telling them that they're running when they don't believe that they are. So, it's a problem, but it's something that we're getting better at. The whole game is getting better at it, and it is very tempting to play the ball into space so that someone can run onto it. But it's a very technical game. You have to play the ball to feet. You have to have a good first touch, and that's the beauty of the game. It's quite technical.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess as with any referee across any code of the game, you've just got to have eyes in all parts of your head, haven't you?
Yeah. And the running off the ball is, as I say, a real difficult one to spot, because you do tend to follow the ball and you're trying to cut out the contact. But players will try it. But I've found that if you're very strict in the first few minutes of the game and they realise they can't get away with things, they will slow down and they will play the game properly. Yeah. And that's what the vast majority of people want, is for it to be walking football.
That's right. Let's move on to yourself. You are as you mentioned, the manager for the over 60s England team, and the assistant for the over 40s women. Was that right?
That's right. Yeah, with the WFA. Yes, that's correct.
So how did you become one of the England managers?
Yeah, well, it's quite bizarre, really. I mean, I've volunteered in football all my life. I started coaching youth football when I was 12 years old. I'm a teacher by profession. I've always run school teams. As soon as my boys turned 5 years old, I started coaching at their youth team. And in fact, I became chairman of their youth club for 21 years. And as soon as my youngest son turned 16, I started coaching him senior football. So I've always been involved in coaching football. I had my hip replaced in 2007. And for me, I was still playing 11-a-side at the grand old age of 47, gradually moving backwards down the pitch. I was a striker, but gradually moving back into midfield and then into defence, gradually moving from the firsts down to the fourths. And I thought that when I had my hip replaced, I thought that would be it for football. I did try to play 11-side football in the new team that I formed for my son and his friends, a third team in the lowest division, but I couldn't stand the competitiveness and the running of the big pitch. And I saw an advert for Walking Football, a team locally, and I approached them and joined them, and we did very, very well. And I thought, this is absolutely brilliant. And it was something that we were missing at my club. We had youth teams from the age of 5 all the way up to seniors, and we had 4 or 5 senior teams, but there was nothing for the older generation. So we formed Walking Football at my club, Abermead Rovers, and did incredibly well in the first few years. And then I saw an advert on the WFA newsletter asking for people who were interested in running a national team, and I applied. My logic at the time was, when am I ever going to be able to say that I've applied for a national manager's job ever again?
Yeah.
Thinking I didn't have a chance. But the criteria at the time was a proven success in walking football and the ability to manage people. Being a teacher, I think my people management skills have always been okay. I'm quite a well-organised person. And my little club, Abbeymead Rovers, which is a housing estate in a rugby-mad city, had actually done incredibly well. We got through to national finals and come second and third in the country. So I applied, and amazingly, I was offered the role. Completely voluntary.
Yeah.
The interview was 2 hours long and included doing some video work because, I was told that I would quite possibly have to do TV interviews. So I was asked some fairly random and bizarre questions live, if you like, and had to respond to them. So, I was just completely blown away. It was something that, for me, was beyond a dream. To be offered that opportunity was beyond a dream. I couldn't even have possibly dreamt that I would ever manage a national team, and here was an opportunity, and I've grabbed it with both hands.
Absolutely. And it's important to mention that the WFA aren't under the England banner, the FA's England banner, as we know. So you weren't interviewed by the likes of Sir Trevor Brooking and David Bernstein or whoever's in charge at that level, but it is still just as an important association to be part of.
Yeah, the FA aren't involved at all at a national level. The FA's involvement is through their county FAs. So no, the WFA, as I say, was set up in 2016 as the self-proclaimed governing body, as all governing bodies are when they first start, but with a pure aim on developing the game of walking football. And the whole concept behind forming national teams was to raise the profile of the sport. The infamous Barclays advert from many years ago, with older guys walking around with an iPad, filming the game as they were playing, did wonders for the game right at the start.
Yeah.
But it also didn't do justice to the fact that we wanted 50-year-olds to play the game, and that not everyone was quite so immobile as those people. So, yeah, the idea behind forming a national team was to raise the profile of the sport. I was interviewed by the directors at the time, and so the FA aren't involved, and the FA do not actually recognise any of the organisations who are currently involved in walking football. But it's left to us to try and develop the game and grow the sport as much as we can at the moment.
Yeah, no, and I wish you all the best with it. But as England manager, and I know we shouldn't really compare like for like, but Gareth Southgate, he will look at the players across the country and the players within those teams. You're an England manager as well. So how do you go about selecting players to play for England? And is there levels of walking football teams up and down the country? How do you go about your job?
Okay, so how we started was we organised national trials. We had 4 national trials to start with, one in the south east, one in the southwest, one in the Midlands, one up north. The first one was at Cirencester in the southwest, at Millwall, at Burnley, and in Solihull. And we asked walking football clubs to nominate players, and we said they could nominate 2. We knew that there were some clubs around the country who were very successful, who clearly had more than 2 quality players, and we said that they could nominate more than 2 if they spoke to us and they could justify nominating more than 2. So we ended up by trialling at the time. I mean, bearing in mind this was a few years ago now when the game was not quite as big as it is now, we trialled about 150 at over 50 and 150 at over 60. And the trials were really successful. We basically split players into teams, predefined teams. We had midfielders, defenders, goalkeepers, strikers in each team. They weren't players that they had played with before. And we made it clear that we were looking for technical players. We were looking for team players. I mean, for example, at 1 or 2 of the trials, there were players who were brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant. But their attitude was awful. And there was no way, bearing in mind that this is all completely voluntary, that they would have upset the apple cart. So, we've been looking for players who are gifted, talented in terms of playing walking football, but also who would fit into a team. And we had to make sure that we were able to build a team, and we wanted these players to be role models, because we knew that if we were playing matches around the world, that we would be looked at and helping to develop the game in other countries. So that's what we were looking for. We selected squads, and we had a main squad and a shadow squad. And then we have training days. And what we've done from that point onwards is we've always kept spaces at training days to invite trialists in. And as the game has developed, we've realised that it's so difficult for us. I mean, like I say, I'm a volunteer. I don't get travelling expenses. I can't go and stay in hotels up in the north of England to go and watch club games. So what we've now developed are regions.
Right.
So we have 5 regions, and we bring those regions together 3 or 4 times a year to play against each other. So we can go and watch regional games, and we can spot players at that level. And we can take our England team to play against the regions as well. So that's our way of spotting new talent at the moment. And clearly players are getting older all the time, but also there are players turning 60 all the time. So we've developed things. We've now developed an over 65s team, an over 70s team, and an over 75s team at the men's level. And women's, we've got 40s, 50s, and 60s. So the players who come to us feel that there is some progression. And there's no guarantee that if they've been selected for one team that they're going to automatically, when they turn 65, go into the next team. And there's no necessity when they hit 65 for them to leave the 60s team. Okay. So it's all about opinion. As we know, football is all about opinion.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And there are players that I've selected that maybe other people wouldn't. But that's football. It's about opinion, and you're judged on your results. And we've done incredibly well so far. And we've managed to build a team that there's a fantastic togetherness with the team. They all get on really well, and I'm proud to say they are role models.
Well, you said that the England team has been really successful. Tell us some of the results, and I've seen as well, obviously, that very first international that was played down at Brighton's Amex Stadium. Go on, tell us a little bit more about the England results and how you've progressed through since then.
Okay, so the very first match, as you said, was down at the Amex Stadium in Brighton, and what an occasion that was. The first ever international walking football matches played at over 50s and over 60s. And I can tell you, to stand there with the team, linking arms, belting out the national anthem, was one of the proudest moments of my life, and for all of those players, and to be part of history was quite incredible. The over 60s won their game 3-0. The over 50s won 2-0. Since then, we've been back out to Italy. The only defeat of any of the England teams has been so far my over 60s team.
Right.
We played out in Italy. It's easy to blame other people, isn't it? But they parked the bus. Again, as I said earlier, this is the difference with facilities. They didn't have walking football-sized goals, so they played in handball goals, which are much narrower, and much more difficult to score in. And they parked the bus, and we must have had about 30 to 40 shots on target. Their keeper was diving out the way, and it was hitting his feet, and nothing. It would have been one of those games where we could have played all day and not scored. And they had about 3 shots, one of which hit the heel of one of our players and sort of dribbled over the line. Hey, no excuses. It's one of that's football, isn't it? You can have games like that. The over 50s drew 0-0. So, you can tell that in 2 hours of walking football, there was only 1 goal scored. That's how defensive and how difficult it was. But that was our only defeat. We had a fantastic game out in Gibraltar, and they saw their numbers grow as a result. We've played Wales home and away, and won those games. We organised a European Championship. Now, at the time, there were only 2 other countries. There was England, Italy, and Wales who had proper national teams. And we weren't going to lower our standards and allow club teams to come and represent a country. Yeah. So, yes, at the time, there was lots of comments about the fact that there were only 3 teams, but there were only 3 national teams in Europe at the time, and you can only beat what's in front of you. So we became European champions. We've been trying to run a World Nations Cup for the last 2 years, but obviously COVID has impacted on that. And the first World Nations Cup is planned for May next year, May 2022. And at the moment, we have 16 teams at each age group represented. So that tells you how much the game has grown. And those teams have all confirmed that they've had trials and that they've selected a team. So they're not club teams representing their country, they're selected teams. We know that they're all sometimes not the whole nation, but as the sport is growing, if they're a large region within a country, then and walking football hasn't got organised in the rest of that country, then, you know, so long as there have been trials that have been taking place across a large part of that country, then we'll welcome them into the World Nations Cup. So that's going to be a fantastic event.
So where's that going to be hosted?
At the stadium up at Manchester City, not the main stadium, but the
training one next to it.
Academy and training stadium next to it, which has a 5,000 seater capacity. So, we're fantastic. We're very lucky that we've got the support of Manchester City and Manchester FA and Lancashire FA and Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, and all of sort of the Manchester community like that are behind us running that event there, which is fantastic.
Excellent. Well, look forward to maybe speaking again next year ahead of that, maybe to get the lowdown on it.
You'd be more than welcome. We've also got another event coming up, which is a first as well. We're holding intergender matches up at St George's Park.
Right.
So our own over 40s women and over 50s women and over 70s men are taking part in matches. We've got Kick It Out supporting us behind this because obviously it's, as we understand, it's the first sort of intergender matches at that level. We know that club teams, women play against men, but at that sort of national level, we believe that's the first, and that should be a fantastic occasion up at St George's Park. So you'd be more than welcome to come up to there as well if you wanted to see what we do.
Oh, let's see how things pan out, and be interested to see how that goes. Now, just going back to that first game at Brighton, it was well publicised at the time that England lifted that trophy against Italy, but there were a couple of familiar names that people may recognise. Yeah,
first of all, the trial up at Burnley was quite incredible. We had a chap called Tommy Charlton and a Liverpool legend called Alan Kennedy, both trialling up at the Burnley trial, and I've got this fantastic picture of we put them in the same team, and there are about 4 or 5 film crews around this group just filming what was going on and doing interviews and such like. And Alan wasn't available for that first match, but Tommy was invited as the ambassador for the WFA, and we selected our team of 10, and Tommy came along as the ambassador and joined us on the day, and he came on for the last 15 minutes of that match and played, and it just created such a media storm. And it was
it's just important to mention for those that maybe haven't put 2 and 2 together that Tommy Charlton is the younger brother of Bobby and Jack Charlton.
Yeah, and it was just lovely to be able to give him his first England cap, if you like, at the age of 73, bearing in mind everything that his brothers had achieved. And he is so proud of what his brothers had achieved. And his career was cut short in his 20s by injury. But he'd started walking football like the rest of us in his older years. And to give him that opportunity of going out and representing his country at the age of 73 was fantastic. It certainly created a huge amount of media interest, which, again, going back to what I said earlier on, is about raising the profile of the sport. And that the coverage of that game was seen across the world. And I'm sure has helped people in other countries to think, well, that's a game that we could start up. We certainly know that it was seen in Singapore and Australia and New Zealand, and it created a lot of interest in those countries who started the sport as a result of seeing it. So it achieved what we wanted it to achieve, and it was a fantastic moment for all of the players to be part of that. And for Tommy himself, he was incredibly proud to get that opportunity. So, yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Do you foresee many ex-pros turning to walking football in the future?
That's a very interesting question. And we have 2 ex-pros in the over 60 squad. We have Alan Kennedy from Liverpool, as you know. Yeah. We actually gave, he won his 3rd cap, having won 2 previous England full international caps, his final one being against Wales and his 3rd cap being walking football against Wales. And we've got another chap called Graham Collier, who's ex-Notts Forest and Scunthorpe. But there hasn't been a massive amount of interest from the ex-pros. I think a lot of them are quite happy playing charity games and things like that. You know, there was the well-publicised Harry's Full English and Harry's programme on TV. And, you know, we've contacted them and suggested that it would be good for them to try walking football. But we haven't had a response from that. And, you know, you would think that there would be more ex-pros who are interested in the sport, but we're quite pleased that they're not really, because the wonderful thing about the sport at the moment is it provides opportunities for people who may have not had those opportunities when they were younger.
Yeah.
As I said to you earlier, from my point of view, I've always been involved in grassroots football up until the age of something like 57. And to get the opportunity to be involved at a national level for me is a dream come true, or it's beyond a dream. And I'm sure if you spoke to all of the players who are non-ex-pros who are playing the game, who've been selected for England, they would all tell you the same. You know, this is an opportunity they never thought they would have in life to represent their country. And it's a dream come true for most of them. So we do have rules about it. We say that in a squad of 10, there can only be 3 ex-pros at one point.
Okay.
And there can only be 2 of them on the pitch at any time. So we're not excluding the ex-professionals, but what we are saying is it's predominantly a game for those people who are not ex-professionals. And that's the beauty of the sport.
Yeah. So available to everyone.
It's one of the most inclusive sports that you will find, because although it's clearly open predominantly at competitions to the over 50s, at my club, we have a number of people who are not yet 50 who come to club training sessions for health reasons. And we're finding more and more that people are being, for want of a better word, prescribed walking football because it's good for their health. You have people who are obese. Interestingly, off on a tangent here, but we were asked to go to Malaysia and do some coaching and referee training in Malaysia, because as a country, they've got one of the highest child obesity issues in the world.
Okay.
Which we all found a bit strange. And when we ran these courses, we were actually running the courses to doctors who were connected with hospitals in Malaysia and Kuala Lumpur, and with the University of Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to go into schools and get walking football started in schools in order to help reduce childhood obesity. And we've had a number of cases in this country of obese people who've been told, go and play walking football because it will be good for your health. At my club, we've got a guy with a heart condition who's been told he can't play 11-a-side football, but he can come and play non-contact walking football because that's good for his health. We've got a growing number of people who have suffered from strokes, and as part of their rehabilitation, walking football is good for them. We've got a guy at Abbeymead who's in his 30s, had a stroke, was only given a 2% chance of survival.
Really?
He comes along, he's still paralysed down one side of his body, so movement for him is very difficult. But when he joins in with our club sessions, when he gets the ball, it's like a freeze frame. People stop, they let him pass the ball on, we carry on. And he's just one of the guys for that hour of the week. And we're finding that's happening more and more around the country. And one of the interesting projects that I'm involved at the moment is with walking football for people with Parkinson's. I was asked to be involved in the We Are Undefeatable campaign, which was a huge honour to run a virtual walking football team, which was quite a challenge. One of the guys who was part of that team had Parkinson's, and he shared with us a video of him walking with great difficulty at a Parkinson's sufferer's shuffle. And he shuffled out to a football, And then as soon as the football was at his feet, he just became normal and ran around the garden with his football until his dog tackled him. And then he was sort of left stranded in the middle of his garden, and he had to find his walking sticks and shuffled off again. And, having a football in front of him, he says when he goes to his walking football club, he becomes normal for an hour. And we've looked into that, and we're trying to develop walking football now for people living with Parkinson's. And I'm going to Watford to run a training session for groups of people in the southeast who have got Parkinson's to try and form a team. And then we're going to play a team from the south against a team from the north at the National Parkinson's Games, and try to, again, spread the word and to develop the game as a way of helping people with that condition to feel that they can do a sport that is going to help them.
Yeah, which I think at the moment is so important, bearing in mind the past 18 months that we've all endured. But I think for people who have been maybe isolating and not with that contact with people, and they have got other underlying conditions, but they love the game of football and they're able to go out and participate, is so important.
The health and welfare aspects of walking football are fantastic. Just to get the older generation off their backsides and out in the fresh air doing something that is fit and healthy for them physically is brilliant. But you're right, also the mental side of it, the banter and the fun that these people have. The WFA's strapline, if you like, is friendship, fun and fitness.
Right.
And the fun and the friendship are the most important aspects of that. Just going and having a game of football with your mates, yes, it's competitive, but having a beer or a cup of coffee or something afterwards, the social and community aspects that these clubs are providing for groups of people, it's just fantastic. And I know we were hoping to talk to Tommy Charlton, and he would have said that the benefits of walking football are the biggest reason to get involved in it. The fun that you can have with people that you may have played football with back in when you were 20, 30 years old, or people that you've never met before. It's just the fantastic side of the sport is the health and welfare benefits. And we're finding that that's being sort of spread really as this idea of social prescription, as I was saying earlier, and people with health conditions being able to take part in the sport. But post-COVID, players were itching to get back out. And I think my club is fairly typical of many, that we've had an influx of new players who have been locked up for a year and a half, and they're desperate to get out and do something to get themselves fit. So, it's a growing sport, and the benefits to all its members and people who try it are just fantastic.
Yeah, well, I think that's an ideal opportunity to plug the various ways for people to get involved. I mean, there is a website, isn't there, and Twitter and that side of things on social media. But what are the best ways for people to contact their local walk-in football association?
Yeah, well, the WFA has a Find a Club section on its website. You can also go onto your search for your county FA, and they will have details on their websites of walking football clubs. I'm sure if anyone is listening and they want to find out more, if you just Google walking football in and then put your town or city or village, then things will come up there as to who to contact. There are lots of sessions. Most sessions out there are inclusive. Most sessions are run as a pay and play concept where you don't have to commit to every week. You just turn up and pay your money and play when you can. So there's no commitment to it. Lots of sessions will have beginners sessions as well. And if you're worried about the idea of running, you will very quickly get used to it. After your first week, you'll get used to the fact that you can't run after the ball. You can't play the ball into space for other people to run onto. And yes, it will frustrate the hell out of you to start with. But you very soon get used to it. And we're hoping that doing things like this, the whole idea of doing things like this is to raise the profile of the game, to get more people involved and to share what we're doing at a national level. So hopefully some of the people who listen to this will think, yeah, why not? Let's try it. Let's try the game out. Predominantly for over 50s, but like I said, there's a growing number of people under 50 who are playing the sport as well.
And I wish you all the very best with it, and these global tournaments or coming up next year, let's talk further in the future.
I hope people find it interesting. That's really what we're after is if we can get another 4 or 5 people who take the sport up as a result of listening to this, then it's been a success, because they just want to turn up on a Wednesday night, pay their £5 and play for an hour.
That's right.
And the fact that walking football can do that for people is just brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for your support and inviting me on to talk about it as well. It's great. If you're listening and thinking about it, come and join the fun. It's great.
Excellent. Stuart Langworthy, thank you very much for your time. And as I say, all the best. Thank you to Stuart for his time there. Real insight into the world of walking football. If you do want to find out more, as he said, head to the website, thewfa.co.uk. Or you can follow him on Twitter at Stu Langworthy, STULangworthy. Now, I'll be back very soon with a preview of our matches against Austria and Romania. Yes, they're finally coming round, and I hope you can join me for it. And hopefully I'll be able to bring you a guide to Middlesbrough too. And don't forget, Block 109 are intending to run a coach or coaches from London up to Borough, with stops at Watford, Milton Keynes, Northampton and Watford Gap. Why not drop them a line on social media if you are a travel club member, and if that's something that interests you. As always, thank you for listening. All previous episodes are available at threelionspodcast.com or your usual podcast provider like Spotify or iTunes. And if you are tuned in there, why not drop a review? That'd be quite nice. And the show is on all the usual social media channels. If you do want to get in touch, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And ahead of the Euros, I'm hoping to get as many voices on as possible from you, the supporters. If you want to contribute with an opinion on the games, be it the Croatia one, the Scotland one, the Czech Republic, or fingers crossed going forward, those knockout ones, drop me a voice message by email. Literally just open up your phone, give me a review on the game, keep it to about 30 seconds, send it to threelionspodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get your opinions on the podcast. So until then, take care, look after yourself. Under 40s. I think you can go and get jabbed up now, can't you? Go on, go and do it. Cheers.